Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This time around, I actually tried to make this video before, but I didn't really like the results of it, so I'm going to have another crack at it. Ended up taking me like an hour to explain something that should only take about 20 minutes or less. Just the story of my life, I guess. So we're just going to get right into it. So I got a famous quote here from some asshole. It goes, the last 20% of your HP is 80% of your HP. The asshole in question is Drakova. He's currently... So, I've heard Drakova say this many times. The last 20% of your hit points is 80% of your hit points. And I always kind of understood what he was talking about, but I never really understood what he was talking about until... well, I should say that I probably still don't really understand, but I feel like I have a much better comprehension of what exactly he's talking about after talking to Talrain on the last Polycast about Ret-Reckoning. So I'm pretty sure that this statement really applies primarily to Ret-Reckoning. It applies to the other Paladin specs that can actually heal in combat as well, but it applies in a different way. So we're going to talk about how this statement holds true specifically for Ret-Reckoning, not how it holds true for Holy Reckoning. Okay, so these hit point bars and this statement here, this 20% number, is really focused around you having about 5,000 hit points, or preferably over 5,000 hit points, like 5,100 hit points. So we're going to assume, essentially, that 10% of your life is 500 hit points, and 20% of your life is about 1,000 hit points. And then I suppose 1% of your life would be about 50 hit points each by that comparison. So, talking to Talrain, what was very interesting for me to learn about Ret-Reckoning is once you're physically on top of certain casters, you're heavily prioritizing pushback from like summoning trinkets. If you didn't watch Polycast number 4, I think it was, I would definitely go do that if you're interested in Ret-Reckoning at all. He was heavily prioritizing pushback once he was physically on top of certain classes, namely elemental shamans, mages, and to a lesser extent give me a sec to formulate my thoughts so I prevent the rambling. Okay, I'll get straight to the point. Drink of water. Once you're physically on top of certain casters, specifically mage and specifically elemental shaman, and to a lesser extent even the other casters such as warlock, the other Destro warlock or SL warlock or affliction warlock, or even shadow priest. But we're going to talk mainly about elemental shaman and mage, and you should get an idea of what we're talking about. So the general principle is, once you're physically on top of the casters as a paladin, especially as like a Ret-Reckoning paladin in particular, the types of spells that the caster can now perform are very limited. They can only really use instant cast spells or spells that have a remarkably short cast time, such as no, it's not Psychic Scream. I'm trying to remember the priest one that does shadow damage. That's got like a 1.5 second cast. So the idea is that they can get the cast off in between like your melee attacks. And Talrain is a big fan of leaning into summoning, using like a Barov's trinket, or a battle chicken, which has a really fast attack speed, or like a skeleton book summon, to really get the pushback going. And the whole idea behind this is, if you can force them to have pushback issues, or you can force them to suffer stuns from Seal of Justice twisting. For those who don't know, Seal of Justice, it has about a 1% proc chance per point per 0.1 second of swing time. So if your weapon has like a 3-second swing timer, then Seal of Justice will have a 30% chance to proc. That's it. Or you can think of it like 10% chance per 1 second of swing time. 1 second here. Amy, what the fuck are you doing? You're literally massaging a trash bag. So I'm asking you to be quiet, and you're literally petting a trash bag.
I just tried to stick it on the table.
Is it working?
No.
Oh, okay. Holy crap. I just keep hearing this. I'm like, what the fuck? And I look over at you, and you're literally like, yeah, the trash bag, I'm like, what the wow. So, that's my wife. She's literally, apparently she's like staring at her cell phone, and then she's trying to like tape this trash bag or something to like the edge of a table. But as I'm looking at her, she's literally, it's like she's petting the trash bag, trying to make as much noise back there as possible. I'm like, holy crap. You guys probably don't hear it, but to me that was kind of hilarious. Where the hell was I? All right. Okay, so once you're physically on top of the casters, if you can cause pushback issues, if you're seal twisting, Seal of Justice, and Seal Command, which apparently is a thing, and you're going for those stuns, you're greatly limiting the spellcaster's options for what they can do. And essentially, from that point, what the spellcaster can do and what you can do really depends upon your life total. So I'll give you an example of where you don't want to be, and then we'll talk about where you want to be and why. So where you don't want to be is physically on top of a caster with 10% life. And the reason why you don't want to be on top of a caster with 10% life is if it's a mage, a single fire blast or cone of cold or even an arcane explosion, because the arcane explosions vary in their damage between like 500 and like 450, like, you know, somewhere around there, depending on the situation. So you're basically one global instant cast from death at 10% life. If you're physically on top of an elemental shaman, he's probably already used his Earth Shock. So his Earth Shock's on a 5-second cooldown. But this means that you've got 5 seconds until you just die. There's no real RNG involved at all. It's the same thing with the mage, like, you know, one cone of cold, one fire blast, one arcane explosion, and you're pretty much gone. However, if we look at the situation of existence at 20% life, or even if we look at the existence of the situation like going from 10% life to like 12% life, the situation begins to drastically change, because now suddenly it's going to take more than one global to kill you, right? Like if you're at 20% life, it's probably going to take 2 arcane explosions to kill you. It's going to take 2 globals to theoretically kill you. And what's even better is, let's start from the beginning. So let's say you're 12% life. You go from 10% life to 12% life. Suddenly that arcane explosion isn't going to kill you anymore, right? Which means they're going to require 2 arcane explosions. Or they're going to require their arcane explosion to crit. So you're risking the crit, but at least you have a chance of surviving for like another melee attack and so forth and so on. As your hit point number increases, though, suddenly you can survive that potential crit, which makes you even more deadly as a Ret-Reckoning paladin, because suddenly, like by the time you get up like 16% hit points, life remaining, you're something like, yeah, so suddenly you can survive that crit. So suddenly you want that arcane explosion to actually crit you, because it means that you're doing eye for an eye return damage on the crit, and then you're get an extra reckoning charge for a melee attack. And the next thing you know, that arcane explosion to attempt to whittle you down and kill you might just crit you, and subsequently the mage just explodes. The same story happens with the elemental shaman. So the elemental shaman's Earth Shock does about 800 hit points of damage. So 10% life, like 500 hit points, isn't really going to cut it. By the time, however, you get up to like 16% life, you can actually survive the Earth Shock as long as it's not a critical. And since elemental shamans are probably running around at about 25% crit chance, or maybe a little bit more than that, I'd be surprised if they get over 25% crit chance. That means that you got a 75% chance that their next Earth Shock will not kill you, which gives you this massive window of beating their dick off of about 10 seconds. So picture this. Picture you jump on top of an elemental shaman and you have just enough life to survive an Earth Shock. You know it. They might not know it, but you definitely know it. So this means that they have 5 seconds between their next Earth Shock. If they have half of, but they can't really do anything because you popped like Burlov's trinket or you're seal twisting and stunning them, and you're just making their life absolutely miserable. This is Ret-Reckoning perspective, by the way. They're going to have to suffer 5 seconds until their next Earth Shock. Their next Earth Shock is very likely not going to kill you, like more likely not going to kill you than actually kill you. Then they're going to have to suffer another 5 seconds before they can actually get out another Earth Shock and kill you. Now, a lot of elemental shamans will do the smart thing, and they'll start meleeing you inside this window to try to whittle your life down just a little bit so the Earth Shock can really end you, which is why the number is literally 20% life and not like, oh, 16% life and you got a 75% chance to survive the Earth Shock. No, what's going to happen is the elemental shaman is going to melee you a few times, Earth Shock you, and you're going to die. So you really want to be at this magical like 20% number. At 20%, you're sitting like comfortably over like 1,000 hit points. You probably have like 1,100 hit points exactly, because we do advise that you try to get up to 5,100 hit points at a minimum. So you're going to be sitting at about 1,100 HP, and that's enough at that point that a single Earth Shock a single Earth Shock and a few melee hits aren't going to do it. And also, a Earth Shock critical strike isn't going to finish you off either, because what? I take it back. Yeah, no, an Earth, if it crits you, you're gone. Because if it crits you, you're taking 1,600 points of damage, and you probably just exploded. Okay, I'm going to take another drink of water. But the same story holds true again for like the mages and the warlocks and the shadow priests and all that kind of stuff. If they can't kill you in their next spell cast and you're making it really difficult for them to root themselves in place and get off their really powerful spells, they're in a really bad position. And they are in an even worse position if those spell casts are able to crit you, and then you're still alive and subsequently you can do all the damage in the world because of how Reckoning and Eye for an Eye works. Okay, so that's the general concept. Let's talk about some more specific things as to why 20% of your life is 80% of your HP. So this is one of the main reasons why we talk about hit point break points the way that we do. Hit point break points, apparently they work a little differently for Ret-Reckoning, because Ret-Reckoning, you're kind of working the 20% of your HP is 80% of your HP type angle. I forgot to mention bubble. Yeah, so if you're like at 20% life versus an elemental shaman, and you take the Earth Shock in, and then like, so it's like 5 seconds later you get Earth Shock, you survive the Earth Shock, then like 4 seconds later when the Earth Shock, you're about to get Earth Shocked again, you bubble, and then you keep beating them to death. It's an absolute nightmare. So let's talk about the value of hit points, like the secondary aspect of this. So you might be gearing your paladin, and you might be at like 5,000 hit points. Like a guy, the whole reason I'm making this video is a guy asked me, is like, he has a choice between 2 gearing options. One gearing option was like he got an extra 1% crit, and the other option was like an extra 80 hit points. And I'll make it even more extreme, and we'll do it quite definitively. So let's say we're talking about the difference between 100 extra hit points and like 2% extra crit. Believe it or not, this is really close and hard to tell. If it was, but I'm going to tell you the value of an extra 100 hit points. So you might be, a more accurate situation you'd be looking at would be, I take it back. I'm not going to make a more definitive lol. If it's a difference between an extra 100 hit points and an extra 1% crit. The extra 100 hit points is going to be an extra 100 hit points you have to play with here. Like, don't think of it as an extra 100 hit points to play with here, because you'll be thinking of it as, like, like, oh, I'm 5,000 hit points, an extra 100 hit points is only an extra 2% life. whereas an extra 1% crit is like an extra 1% to my damage total. Clearly, the extra 1% crit is better. One sec, I got a cough. Like, clearly the extra 1% crit is better, blah, 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 blah. The answer is actually no in a lot of cases. And the reason is because whatever extra hit points that you're adding on to this end over here is going to be extra hit points you have to play with once you're physically on top of your enemy. So rather than you being at, let's say, 10% life, you're going to be at 12% life. Let's go to an extreme example. So you gave yourself an extra 100 hit points over here, which means you have suddenly an extra 100 hit points over here, which means you went from 10% life and physically on top of a caster to 12% life and physically on top of a caster. So now suddenly you have 600 hit points as opposed to 500 hit points, and you're physically on top of that mage. What this literally means is that their next arcane explosion, unless it crits, isn't going to kill you. Whereas their next arcane explosion, crit or no crit, would just end you. Which means suddenly you at least have a snowball's chance in hell of actually being able to kill that mage. Whereas before you might not have had that capability at all. Flash forward to you having 20% life, you would go from having 20% life to play with to suddenly 22% life to play with. Suddenly you go from having 1,000 hit points to play with to having 1,100 hit points to play with. And suddenly it's going to take 3 arcane explosions to kill your ass. Or 1 arcane explosion critical strike, and then like another normal one, and then to kill your ass. Might even be a bit more than that, so that'd be like 5,750, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so it's going to take an arcane explosion to kill you. So those extra hit points that you're adding are actually a really big deal. But this is why we talk about breakpoints and the sweet spots. It's really hard to determine where exactly the breakpoint is. This is also why we've been talking at how much we fucking absolutely adore Obsidian Edge breastplate. So Obsidian breastplate is so bullshit because it means that rather than being down here at 10% life, like let's say you're fighting a mage, or you're fighting an elemental shaman, or you're fighting a warlock, or you're fighting whatever, rather than being down here at 10% life, you're going to have like an extra 800 hit points to play with. Like Obsidian breastplate is going to proc like twice. It's going to give you 2 400 bubble shields. That's going to suck it up, and next thing you know, rather than being down here at 500 hit points, you're at 10% life, you're going to be down there at, what the hell is that? That's another 6%? 6%. I could give you the life total. Life total is 1,300 hit points. You're down here at 1,300 hit points. This is like 1,000 hit points. Yeah, I think you'd be at like 26% life. You're at 1,300 hit points. So let's talk about what the hell you can do with 1,300 hit points. So 1,300 hit points is literally like, okay, the next Earth Shock isn't going to crit me, but it also better, unless it crits. If the Earth Shock crits, I'm dead at 1,300 hit points. If the Earth Shock doesn't crit, I'm happy as a clam. You're going to take like 3 or 4 arcane explosions to kill you. Each arcane explosion that's hitting you has a chance of proccing Obsidian Edge breastplate again, and you can just see where the compounding bullshittery comes into effect. So it's like, oh, if it's going to take 4 arcane explosions to kill your ass, it's going to take 3 arcane explosions to kill you at, what the hell is this, like 26% life. The odds are you're going to proc another Obsidian breastplate, so for another 400 hit points. So it's going to take like 4 arcane explosions to kill you. Odds are one of those arcane explosions is going to be a critical strike, and you're just going to do terrible things to the enemy. So if you didn't watch the Palicast video, against mages, Talrain was really a fan of like rocket boots, like literally getting on top of the mage and making their life absolutely miserable. He says a lot of them kind of freak out and they start casting Arcane Explosion to get you off of them. And even if they like go oh shit and they start trying to cast like sheep on you and stuff, you just do your seal twisting and pray to the RNG gods that you get the stun. And if you get the stun from there, you know, they might blink and you can hit them with a grenade and all that. It's just really bad to be physically on top of a mage, according to him. So I'm like, I'm going to take his word for it. Okay. So let's talk about, okay, it's Elemental Shaman. What does it look like? So if you're on top of an Elemental Shaman with like 20% life, and you have Obsidian Edge Breastplate, like let's say this is the scenario. Like this isn't your life against an Elemental Shaman. This would be your life against an Elemental Shaman without Obsidian Edge Breastplate. Suddenly you're working with another, we decided it was 16% life. Yeah, you're not at 20% life. You're at 36% life, right? So you literally have, what is that? That's like 1,800 hit points. Dude, now you're surviving an Earthshock critical. Right? Now, the next Earth Shock that comes down, even if it crits you, you don't die. And then there's like another, like a 30% chance that Earth Shock also procced Obsidian Edge Breastplate to give you even more hit points. So it's like, oh, it came down. Yeah, you get the point. There's just this compounding existence. There's this compounding of benefit from Obsidian Edge Breastplate down at the lower levels. The same thing kind of holds true for like Destro locks. So the number one thing you want to do against a Destro lock is first you want to kind of observe what kind of pet they have. Are they using a succubus or are they using a voidwalker? If they're using a succubus, then feel free to use your bubble to kill the succubus. Like don't even take the soulfire. Like literally get CC'd by the succubus. They'll be charging up a soulfire or a nasty ass frostbolt on or shadowbolt on you, one of the two. Once you see them cast it and it's coming towards you, just bubble that shit, turn and start melee attacking, exorcisming, grenading, sapper charging, whatever the hell you have to do to make that succubus go away as quickly as possible. Then you try to get on top of the spellcaster. So let's talk about the spellcaster's life when you're physically on top of them as a paladin. So when you're physically on top of any spellcaster in the game, almost none of them have pushback immunities. So I can literally list off the pushback immunities. So for a warlock, their only pushback immunity is if they have the Voidwalker sack shield on them. How you get around that is you either keep some damage in reserve or your stun in reserve so that when they sack the Voidwalker, you can rapidly cut through the shield. Much better it is to do that you just either stun the Voidwalker or you stun the Warlock. I forget which one it is. They can't sacrifice their pet, and then you just nuke the shit out of the pet so there wasn't even a Voidwalker sacrifice in the first place. But if you're physically on top of a Warlock and they do not have a Voidwalker, they're in trouble. They can try to death coil you off of them, but that's only a temporary fix to the problem. You're just going to be right back on top of them, and once you're physically on top of them, the Warlock literally can't do shit. Like they're going to struggle casting Shadow Bolts, they're going to struggle casting Fears, especially if you pop a Burlov's Trinket on them, as Rex Troy suggests. Rex Troy? No, not Rex Troy. Talrain suggests. What else can you do? Yeah, so they don't have any pushback immunities once you're physically on top of them. For priests, it's the same deal. They don't really have any pushback options without their bubble shield as well. For mages, it's the same thing. They only have pushback immunity if they have their bubble shield up. So you just play around that a little bit, and you make sure that once that thing comes up, you're cutting it down as quickly as possible in order to really stick the pushback to them. Elemental Shamans theoretically have pushback immunity, but they never take it because their talent points are at a premium, and they just can't afford it. Like, their options in their talent tree are literally more burst, or if something's physically on top of me, I kind of sort of have pushback immunity. And it's like, no, they always take the burst. What other spellcasters are there? Mages, pushback, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so what Talrain is basically suggesting from what I'm seeing is he's, against casters, he's really working the pushback angle. And a lot of the pushback angle has to do with what is your HP total once you're physically on top of the caster. So if you're going to work the pushback angle, and you're going to take that Burlov's Trinket, or you're going to take that Battle Chicken Trinket to really make them suffer when they're physically on top of them, a primary consideration is going to have to be, what is going to be your hit point total once you're physically on top of the caster? Do you have enough hit points to even play this game, or you're going to be forced to bubble or stop and heal yourself or something else like that. From a Ret-Reckoning perspective, this statement of the last 20% of your HP is 80% of your HP is a completely different animal. Because what we're basically doing as Holy Reckoning is I'm healing at like 40% life. Like I will start a heal at 50% or 40% life as Holy Reckoning. And then typically what that does is like I'll start healing at 40%. The enemy's grenade will come out and hit me. It'll interrupt me. It'll stun me. They'll start charging up like a frost bolt or a shadow bolt or whatever the hell they're going to hit me with. Mind Blast? Mind Blast? I think that's the pre-spell I was forgetting before. And they're hoping it's going to crit me. So like, let's say I'm sitting at 40% life, and they're like, man, I hope this Frostbolt crits. Man, I hope this Mind Blast crits. Man, I hope this, like, Lightning Bolt or this Lightning Bolt Earthshock combo finishes off this Paladin or whatever. Like, they're really hoping for that. But I've usually have enough hit points and enough durability and enough resists that I know exactly where I need to start healing to make it virtually not possible for them to kill me. So if I start healing at 50% life, I'll have like 2,500 hit points to go with, usually with backed up by a little bit of resist. The odds of that Frostbolt killing me, even if it crits, is not good. The odds of that Lightning Bolt killing me, the odds of that Earthshock killing me, the odds of whatever the hell they're about to throw at me killing me is very poor. And I can also mix in a little bit of RNGesus with it. So, for example, if I'm 40% life and I start healing and then they throw the grenade at me and I get stunned and like, okay, it would be like I'm 50% life, they throw the grenade, I take 500 hit points of damage, I'm down to 40% life, they start charging up like that Lightning Bolt Earthshock combo at me, right? They're like, okay, I'm gonna hit him with a Lightning Bolt, I'm gonna hit him with an Earthshock. If neither of these crit, I'm gonna take 1,600 points of damage. That won't kill me because I'm still sitting at like 2,000 hit points. But if at least one of them crits, it'll kill me. And this is what the casters are thinking. They're thinking that Mind Blast, if it crits, I've got him. That this Shadow Bolt, if it crits, I've got him. This Frost Bolt, if it crits, I've got him. From my perspective, what I'm thinking is, I'm gonna come out of this of this 3-second stun before you can get off that Frost Bolt or that Lightning Bolt or that Shadow Bolt or that, maybe not the Mind Blast, but the Mind Blast isn't really gonna kill you. And I'm gonna get out of this stun and have before you're gonna get off that spell cast. Like, it's going to happen. Or more accurately, you're going to get off that spellcast, but before that spellcast actually makes physical contact with me and it registers damage on me, I'm going to get out and I'm going to have something I can do. And what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to pop a Whipper Root, or I'm going to pop a little healing potion. And so now I've literally just baited out your grenade, which is how life works for the Holy Reckoning. So Holy Reckoning is... The statement, the last 20% of your HP is 80% of your HP, doesn't really apply to Holy Reckoning, because Holy Reckoning is kind of asking ourselves, we just want to survive the enemy's most deadly kill combos, right? Like, we just want to survive them stopping us from healing combos. So, for example, a really deadly combo would be, I'm 50% life, I'm going for a big heal, I get grenaded, I can't heal, I come out of the grenade, I Whipper Root myself back up 900 hit points, I go for the heal again, they finish their spell cast on me, and then immediately hit me with like a Goblin Mortar, so that shuts down my healing again. So, I'll give you an example of what life looks like from a Holy Reckoning perspective. Life is kind of like... I'm 50% life, I go for the heal. My opponent might be thinking they can kill me. Like, their experience with Paladins is they don't have as many hit points as I do. I'm 50% life. They're like, aha, I can kill him. So they pull the trigger on their kill combo. Now, technically, I'm baiting out their kill combo, right? Because I could have healed it 70% life or 75% life or 80% life. I don't have to be healing at 50% life. So literally what happens is I'm sitting at 50% life, I get grenaded, I may or may not resist the grenade, I play into that. Let's say I don't. I fall down to 40% life, they start charging up their spellcast, so it's like a Frostbolt, for example. It's a good example of a spellcast. I have just enough time when I come out of that 3-second stun to Whipper Root Tuber. So I'll shoot back up from 2,000 hit points to 2,900 hit points. That Frostbolt can come in and crit me for like, 2,500 hit points or some crap like that. Which means I'm still sitting at like 400 hit points. I'm sitting at about 8% life after that crit. I go for the heal again, the Holy Light. Out comes the Goblin Mortar, which if you don't know, Goblin Mortars can do like 500 damage. I may or may not resist the Goblin Mortar, but I was already sitting at like 8% life after the Whipperroot heal. So even 500 damage, I'm going to fall down to like 3% life, and that's only going to stun me for like, 1.5 seconds. Odds are somewhere in here because at this point we've taken like 3 resist checks, and there's a lot of RNGs that's going on. Like I've given everything to the... to the mage at this point. I've given him full damage on a thorium grenade, which is a resist check. I've given him a full stun on me, which is also another separate resist check. I've given him a Goblin Mortar, fire damage on me, and a fire resist check. So that's 4 fire resist checks I've said that have been successful on this mage's side, and I've given him the critical strike on the Frostbolt. And yet still, I'm alive at 3% life, trying to figure... And I'll probably come out of the stun and have enough time to do something else. Like, a lot of times they're like, oh shit, it's 3% life, the Paladin's still alive, let me blink into him and try to finish him off. And what ends up happening is they get, like, stunned while they're blinking at me, or I find something else, or Obsidian Edge breastplate procced, or I got a resist check somewhere. You get the point. So, life as a Holy Reckoning Paladin is a different animal. The statement, the last 20% of my HP is 80% of my HP doesn't really apply. We're kind of trying to sit at about 50% life and really bait things out. We're trying to look killable to our opponent, so they pull the trigger on some serious trying to kill you stuff. And then you survive it with like the hairs on your chinny chin chin chin, or you survive it quite comfortably because they're really rolling the dice on way too much RNG there, in my personal opinion. So you end up surviving it comfortably with like 10% life, and then boom, you heal back to full, and then next thing you know, you're the one who can be completely on the offensive, and because suddenly they don't have any of their stuns to get you physically off of them once you're physically on top of them. Us doing the pushback play style versus the casters is a completely different ball game because we are the pushback. Like we find our Edward the Odd, we find our Flurry Axe, and since we're using Seal of Righteousness, which has ×2 pushback, we become the pushback, right? We don't need trinkets to be the pushback. We become the pushback. What we need desperately as Holy Reckoning is we need them not to have grenades or any stuns or anything like that. We need them to not have the ability to physically get us off of them so we can just beat their dick off over the course of like 20 seconds or so. Okay, so hopefully that helped. 20% of your HP is 80% of your HP. The big takeaway from this is desperately try to get more HP as a Holy Reckoning Paladin. Like, try to get 5,100 hit points, 5,200 hit points, 5,300 hit points. If you can't get those numbers, if you're sitting at lesser numbers, go do an Obsidian breastplate. Like, just put on an Obsidian breastplate and you'll see the difference. You'll be physically on top of a caster with, like, this much health left. And you'll be like, wow, this is really weird. And it completely changes the dynamics of the situation, and it completely changes your playstyle. Especially if you can start seal twisting the Seal of Justice. If you start using a Burlov's Trinket under those conditions, you'll just cause all kinds of problems for the enemy caster. Talrain does highly suggest Rocket Boots. And Rocket Boots, if they do nothing else, will physically get you on top of the spellcaster with way more hit points. Because rather than taking, like, 3 frost bolts before you finally make contact with that frost mage, you're going to take, like, a frost bolt and, like, a cone of cold, and then you're going to be physically on top of them. So you'll probably be on top of them with, like, 50% life or more, and then you still got Whipperroot and Healing Pot behind that, and they're probably just a very, very sad human being. They'll probably cost them their ice blocks to time out the Rocket Boots. And if they're sitting in ice block for too long, you can just literally gear swap out of the Rocket Boots. Other little tips and tricks against mages would be I'm really loving the heartbeat duration RNG of the sheep in Classic WoW, because what it literally does is, like, the smart mages they're taking a few drinks of water until the heartbeat duration becomes too severe, and then they're getting up and they're wanding me to keep me in combat. Because what happens is, if they, the dumber mages, I've discovered, they don't try to keep you in combat as the paladin. They just let the sheep go for as long as it'll possibly go, and they drink as much mana as they possibly can drink. But what that does from our perspective is, the moment we get out of that sheep, which, if you don't know, the heartbeat duration thing is, the CCs in the game, such as sap, such as sheep, such as, there's probably another one that I'm forgetting. Every second that goes by, there's an ever-increasing chance that the CC just falls off. So you might notice that it'll say you're in the sheep for like 40 seconds, but it'll break at like at 20 seconds remaining. Or sometimes it'll break at like 30 seconds remaining, and sometimes it'll break at like 10 seconds remaining. There's an ever-increasing chance, at least I think it's an ever-increasing chance, of the sheep breaking, or the CC breaking as time goes on. Also true with sap. And what's really fascinating about that is, the moment those CCs break, we are not in combat temporarily as the paladin. We are not in combat until they put us in combat. So what this means is, it's a prime gear swapping opportunity. So if you're like jumped by a mage and they like sheep you, and the heartbeat duration falls off and you're not in combat, you can swap into whatever fucking gear you want. You can just be like, boom, anti-mage gear, let's fucking go. Or you can be like, boom, shadow resist suit, let's fucking go. Or you can be like, boom, nature resist suit, let's fucking go. So, or in the case of the rocket boots, and the reason why I bring it up is, you can just snap your fingers and boom, you don't have your rocket boots anymore. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'm stuck with rocket boots. I've got like 200 less hit points. I'm not very happy about it. I use the rocket boots. The rocket boots are done. It costs the mage like an ice block to not die to the rocket boots. Maybe it costs him 2 ice blocks. But now I'm stuck in a sheep and he's resetting the combat. Fuck, what do I do? Well, the answer is, the moment that a heartbeat falls off, you just, switch gear, get out of them rocket boots, get into whatever you want, get into that obsidian breastplate, do whatever you need to do. The reverse is kind of true. You could like start a duel in a resist suit against a person with your ideal two-hander, get a full reckoning charge, and then during a reset you can swap to DPS gear with rocket boots and just come at them and clap them out of existence, just like it was like a world battle where you already have a pre-charge. So there's all kinds of crazy shit you can do with the heartbeat duration, and just getting in and out of combat if you're fine with those longer fights. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say. Hopefully we can get another Pallycast going here pretty soon. And day is full, boys.